The Falcon and the Winter Soldier grieve their recent loss. The terrorists are making plans, but Zemo's not their boss. Our heroes deal with therapists and bankers light of brain. The thought of watching's quite enough to drive us all insane. Sam somehow thinks the government is worthy of his trust. And Bucky seems to miss when he was crumbled into dust. This show is pretty good so far. It seems they've learned some tricks. But how long till it shows it's more unsavory politics? So look away.
Look away.
Look away.
Look away.
There's nothing but army propaganda on the way. Hello.
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 And welcome to America's... Hello, 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 and welcome to America's Widows. I am your beloved uncle, Count Olaf. And here with me is Kimberly Chu.
Hi.
I'm not going to keep up this bit for the whole episode. Hello.
Why don't you just pretend to be Captain America? It seems like everyone's doing that these days.
Hi, I'm the new Captain America, Steve McMayo.
What, you're the new Captain America? I thought I was the new Captain America.
Stans, I'm the new Captain America. Geez. Okay, Kim, how do you find this new episode?
It's really good. I don't know what to tell you. I'm shocked that it is as good as it is 2 episodes in. I was expecting everything to come crashing down by episode 2, but nope. Still very much enjoying it. They had me from, I'd say, the opening credits when they played that really incredible remix of Star Spangled Men, because it was just, first of all, it sounded great, but it was also terrible in the best possible way.
Hell yeah.
It was so bad. I was listening to it and I was like, oh, Loafers is gonna love this fabulous soundtrack.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to go back and really appreciate it, soak it in. Man. Hell yeah. Fucking,
yeah.
Why isn't the theme tune that song? Why isn't the theme tune that song? I'm not gonna rewrite the theme song. But
our theme tune.
I also liked this episode. I don't know if I loved it, but I did like it. See, I think the thing is, the reason the first episode worked so much for me is because it's just really swimming in the tone. And the reason I say swimming in the tone is because that's a term that Andrew Ellard Ent on Twitter used in a derogatory way, and I was like, hell yeah, it was swimming in tone, that's why it's good. Yeah, whereas this had plot. Fuck plot. I don't want plot. I want pure ascended cinema. That's why I watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
It had plot? I didn't notice any plot. Where was the plot?
That, am I right? The plot was okay, though. I can't honestly complain too much. Sam Wilson, am I right?
Sam is great.
Subscribe to the pod. It's Sam Wilson and his relationship with this new Captain America. That's a whole dynamic. That's a whole thing that's going on. How do you find that?
So one of the things I was really interested in with New Cap is how much effort the show puts into making us, if not like him, then at least not hate him, which is obviously an uphill battle, especially because the end of the last episode had him as, like, the jump scare, basically. Like, oh no, it's this asshole, and we hate him, and that was, like, the thing. And now it's like, oh, he's a human being who has feelings.
Yeah. I was struck by that as well, that, like, the first 5 minutes or so are just, like, hanging out in a locker room with this dude and, like, following along as he, like, talks to his friends. And, like, the friend who, like, goes along and tells him, no, you're gonna do great. You're gonna be able to fill the boots. That's like his black best friend.
Oh,
and
yes.
you know, there's a tokenism to that, but there's also like it's a choice. There's an aesthetics to it. It's not like this guy has no black friends. they're also being careful to make clear that, like, he's genuinely very accomplished. This isn't just some schmuck who looks good, who they handed the shields to as a mascot. He's done his homework.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's curious because, like, it works very hard to make him seem, not like a 2D scumbag, as then when it gets to the end and it's time for him to do the kind of evil eye at Sam and say, "You best stay out of my way," it works better because you get a sense of, like Nick Fury back in Winter Soldier, and even Alexander Pierce back in Winter Soldier, this guy has been given the strongest possible version of his argument. He's been given the most sympathetic possible look at his position. So when he does say and do things that are kind of shitty, you understand that it's shitty, and you understand that the show is still essentially taking the same position, but this guy also still feels like a real person.
Yeah, he does. And also, like, I was also really struck by the sort of Steve parallels that you get in his introductory bit. Because right at the beginning when he says, I don't want to do basically what is the Bond show circuit, I'd like to do the work. And then his friend has to be like, this is the work. Well, that's very Steve, isn't it? Yeah. Especially since they do, they do the same musical number, basically, that they did with Steve.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a parallel there. You're absolutely right. I hadn't really twigged that. And it's always nice to see the MCU continuing to find interesting things to do with First Avenger, when First Avenger was not perhaps a very interesting movie on its own terms at the time.
I mean, this might be the most interesting thing they've ever done with the First Avenger, other than Winter Soldier, basically. I don't think putting Red Skull on Vormir counts as an interesting thing that they've done with First Avenger. But
no, although that was funny.
Yeah, this and Agent Carter are the two best things they've done with it. Funny
I still haven't seen Agent Carter.
Oh, I highly recommend it. It's great. But it's slowly being edged out of the top spot for Marvel TV shows for me.
Dang.
I know.
With this, mainly?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah. Again and again, I have to stop myself from, like, pivoting into talking about WandaVision.
No!
We have to stay on topic. I did a little digging into comics John Walker, and the stuff from the comics that this, as best I can tell, seems to draw on is... It kind of seems almost exclusively insane. Like, in the 80s, Walker had a stretch as Captain America where he had two sidekicks called Left Winger and Right Winger.
You're kidding me. Really?
No, this is right there. This is right there in the comics. It's right there in the little Marvel wiki.
Do they perpetually stand on his left and his right, like little crows on his shoulder?
I like to imagine that they're like literal tiny little angel devil dudes. It was also more recently in the Civil War 2 thing. It was part of the Captain America Sam Wilson run that this show is drawing a lot from.
Ooh.
But unfortunately, he appeared specifically during the run of Captain America comics where, like, Steve's history gets rewritten so that he was a Hydra agent all along.
My God.
That, like, famously bad part from years ago.
Oh yes, a Hydra agent all along, yes.
Yeah, this character created by Jewish people as, like, a hero to fight the Nazis.
I'm on the bright side, I don't think they're going to be doing that with this.
I don't think they are.
No.
God, it's amazing. Like, however much the MCU stuff up, you can easily and very quickly point to a version of it from the comics that they're based on that is much dumber. Not even necessarily evil, just like Civil War, just the dumbest version.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, what I'm really interested in terms of Sam's relationship with Captain America, generally speaking, is not so much his relationship with the new Cap as his relationship with the old Cap, which I find, and by which I don't mean Steve, I mean Isaiah Bradley, who, holy shit, guys. I didn't know they were going to go there.
Bradley. Yeah. So for those of you, for those listening who don't know, whomst ist Isaiah Bradley? That wasn't a rhetorical question. Feel free to answer it.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was like for those who don't know.
No, I wasn't setting myself up. I was doing tennis here.
All right. So
good podcasting.
Here we go. All right. So in the comics, Isaiah Bradley was the first Black Captain America, and I haven't actually read his comics. I've mostly read his story from Young Avengers, which centers on, I think it's his nephew or his grandnephew, Eli.
Grandson, who was also
grandson?
in that.
Oh, I thought they had an uncle. Okay, yeah, his grandson Eli, who is like in the original run of the Young Avengers team. But anyway, Isaiah Bradley was a person who was given the super soldier serum as part of like medical experiments during the time that Steve was not around, and basically he was sort of used by the U.S. government as a hero for a bit, and then as a test subject for a bit longer, and then they basically just buried the whole project and never spoke of him again. And they seem to have carried that exact backstory into this show, although not
yes.
in, like, we haven't really gone into great detail with it, but we know that he has the serum, and that the US government basically imprisoned and implicitly tortured him for 30 years.
Yeah.
Nice.
I really like the friggin' kind of two birds, one stone thing of there's a whole other super soldier in the worlds that we haven't heard of. Why is that? The reason is racism. They just put him in jail for 30 years.
I mean, yes.
Because he's black. And like Sam says this directly. Oh, you mean there's a black super soldier for decades and no one's known? And, like, that's very loaded. It's very direct.
Yeah.
And also, like, it's played pretty deftly. Like, Sam says it in a very direct way, but he also doesn't speech it. So like, I really liked that whole thing.
Yeah.
I have not read comics with Isaiah Bradley in them. I have read the Kieron Gillen run of Young Avengers, but I have not read the run before that. Would you recommend it?
It's not bad. It's definitely worth a read if you have the time. It's not nearly as good as Volume 2, but I would say that being Team Phonogram stan forever. But, yeah, no, I love Sam's reaction to finding this out, which is he's just so angry. Yes. He's angry about everything. He's angry at Bucky. He's implicitly angry at Steve. And it's not even particularly rational. He's just so pissed. Which is,
Yeah.
I mean, I hesitate to say it's great because it's bad, but it's great. It's really great.
Yeah, it's great as writing, certainly.
Yeah, it is. And, I think it really captures the whole, like, cultural, inherited trauma sort of situation where you reach a point where, like, nothing has to have happened to you, but you identify with the systems of oppression that hurt other people, and just hearing about one thing can just totally set you off.
And again, this was just a case of me discovering today, on the day the episode comes out, that Isaiah Bradley is a character. So excuse me that I'm not like an expert, but I did again skim the Marvel wiki, and I hit on the sentence: his legacy remained a secret to the world at large, but became a legend and a hero to the black community. But not both of those things can be true. There's a lot of black people.
Yeah! Are black people not in the world at large?
Yeah.
I kind of prefer it this way because there's this sense of, like, stolen history, right? It's not just that, like, that institutions of power did not acknowledge the contributions of a black man. It's that other black people, including the person who may well have been the first Black Captain America in a recognized way, had no idea that he existed. Nobody knew about him.
Yeah, nobody knew about him. And, like, there's this thing where super soldier is being coded as an identity that isn't so much to do with the military and our boys in blue, and more to do with, like, how the military and the systems and the government lift you up or tear you down.
Yeah.
And it goes along approximately racial lines, although Bucky is the obvious exception there. And Bucky wasn't under the US government for most of his run.
Yeah. This also reminds me of the bit where Isaiah's talking to Bucky, and he says to him, you can't just decide who you are, who you're gonna be. Well, maybe people like you can. He's not explicit about what he means by that. And there is a bit later where Bucky theorizes that he's talking about, like, when he says your people, he's talking about Hydra, as in, like, the people who, But no, he meant white
Bucky
people.
just takes it as red. Yeah, Bucky just takes it as read that Isaiah meant Hydra, but no.
He meant white people.
And I think it's interesting. I really like this, and like maybe it's actually not good, and maybe this is just me bringing myself to it, but I like that there's a little moment of this otherwise sympathetic character, Bucky Barnes, having this like moment of transparent, casual, if not racism, then just being a dumbass. And that the show kind of pulls him up on that, and it does it without knocking you over the head with it, and it still kind of like trucks along, because I think obviously there's the more common and less helpful way of writing about racism, where like big racist meanies do it and no one else does. Rather than it being like something that's bet into everyone.
No, exactly. And this also sort of leads into like the scene directly after they meet Isaiah, where they go out on the street and cops just like pull up because a white guy and a black guy are shouting in public.
Yeah.
This show leans hard on all cops are bastards. Like it's a very unsympathetic scene for the police. And it's not just...
And again, I don't think it's going all the way with that, because, again, what is Sam if not a type of cop? And Bucky, what's Bucky's deal here exactly? I think the show must have explained it at some point or accounted for it, but, like, I don't think Bucky works for S.H.I.E.L.D. or is an Avenger or anything like that.
I think he's totally not affiliated with any sort of crime-fighting organization, except that they all have their eyes on him. So, like, he's a private citizen. He's a private citizen that everybody is keeping an eye on. And he's got, like, these court-mandated therapy sessions, which I think are the only formal contact that he has with the US government in any capacity. Which is really interesting to me. But I'm also like, I found that scene really interesting in terms of Bucky as well. Because you get, on the one hand, like the obvious racial profiling that only stops when people realize who Sam is. Which is, et cetera,
if I might jump in very quickly, yes. I'll let you go on, but I just want to again point out that like Bucky is again written as not malicious but clueless in a white way, where the first thing he says is to Sam, to like trying to talk Sam down when Sam isn't even really mad. Like he's talking a bit tersely because he's just kind of coming out of an argument with Bucky.
Yeah.
And like he's being he's being like racially profiled, obviously, but like he's not shouting at anyone, and Bucky's still being like,
calm down,
Sam.
Down. Yeah.
And then once this situation escalates a bit more, then he pivots. Trying to talk down the cop. So I think that's interesting that they're kind of riding that line with Bucky, that he's like not unsympathetic, but he is consistently clueless, and I wonder if that's going to boil over as the show goes along.
Exactly, he's well intentioned, but he doesn't get it, and hopefully he will get it. Like he can figure it out when it's right in front of him, but he doesn't really know. He doesn't understand why these things are important.
I think there's a specificity to it that arises from the fact that this is that this is a majority black writers' room.
Oh, I hadn't realized that. That's
well,
cool.
Hang on. Maybe writers' room isn't the right thing, because there's only one writer credited, but the writer Malcolm Spellman.
Oh, that's nice. Well, that would explain a lot. Yeah. But the thing I wanted to mention about that was, so right after Sam gets let off by the police because they're like, oh, I didn't realize you were a famous superhero. Pardon me, I thought you were just a regular black man.
Yeah, that doesn't make it okay. I thought he was
terrible.
going to ask for a selfie again.
Yeah, no, but they go back and arrest Bucky because he's missed a therapy appointment. And it made me think about how, like, obviously Bucky has a degree of white privilege, or like a huge degree of white privilege in that specific exchange. Because, as you can see, all the cops are going after Sam and not after Bucky, even though they're both sort of yelling at each other. But the idea that a person can get arrested for missing a therapy appointment, and like later when Sam's talking to the therapist, he says, we need to work something out. He's not good at fixed schedules. It sort of brings the idea of like disability as another nexus of oppression into the picture. Because the cops have given up on picking on the black guy, and they've gone to pick on the mentally ill, disabled person who is not able to keep court-ordered therapy sessions because he's not great with scheduling. Like, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I think the show understands that it's different and it treats it differently.
Yeah.
But also, I think that there's at least some degree of mindfulness about like how the American healthcare system is not great. Especially that, like, the therapist seems to not be great at being a therapist.
She's very bad at it.
Yeah. She's talking like, I know this isn't professional, but I'm gonna do it. God.
Why couples counseling? Why?
Oh, because it's gay. That's the reason for that.
I mean, sure.
She's a shipper on deck. When they're rolling over each other in the field, that's something else,
man.
That is
cute. That's very cute.
Yeah.
As revealed in the couples counseling session, I think the person who has more of an issue with New Cap is definitely Bucky. Which is surprising. You'd think that he and Sam would be united in their hatred of New Cap. But they're not. So that's interesting.
Yeah, the thing is, it's Sam's fault, so Sam has to be like, no, I did the right thing. I thought I did the right thing. I did the right thing. Whereas Bucky's like, f*** you. That's like the point of contention.
Yeah.
And like, at the start of that episode, I was like, well, why does Bucky care so much? When did Bucky suddenly care about symbols? And then, like, the end of the episode explains that in a pretty satisfactory way. So that
absolutely.
was me told.
Yeah. I mean, that bit where he says, if you gave up the shield, that means Steve may have been wrong about you, and if Steve is wrong about you, it means he's wrong about me, absolutely broke my heart. Like, it was so much. But also, I mean, I didn't find it that surprising that Bucky would be upset about it to begin with. Like, Steve was his best friend. He was the most important person in the whole world for him. Like, this guy broke conditioning for Steve Rogers. There was a whole movie about their big gay love.
Oh, is there? What's it called?
Well, it's called The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, apparently.
Damn. Fucking 6-hour movie. Roll up.
Yeah.
Zooey mama.
Yeah. There was at least maybe 1 and 2 halves of a film about their big gay love, so I totally understand why he's so upset about it. And it's interesting that
that's very generous to Civil War.
Well,
that is not half a movie, but is
it kind of is. It is. It's maybe a quarter of a movie about their big gay love. But
I'd say 5 minutes.
Oh, come on. No, it was at least 20 minutes, although 15 of them were fight scenes. So.
Okay, yeah, and I suppose that does count in a Marvel.
Yeah.
In a Marvel.
Yeah, it does. I'm surprised they don't make anything of like Bucky being kind of annoyed it wasn't him. But then again, I guess
but like that would open up a whole tin of beans.
Yeah. I mean, like, I can understand why. I mean, first of all, I can understand why they didn't want to do it, and then from an in-universe perspective, why Bucky wouldn't expect it to be him or wouldn't want it to be him.
I think Bucky has conflicted feelings about his super soldier status.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But there is a sort of...
I don't think he's uncomplicatedly vying to get back out in the field.
I don't think he wants to be Captain America, which is totally fair.
Yeah.
Although, fascinatingly, he just had a tack jacket available that shows off his whole arm. It's just there. He just had one. Did he cut the sleeves off his hoodie or something? Like, what was that about?
Like, this guy is famously embarrassed of his prosthetic. Yeah.
Well, but there is a bit where, like where he's saying to Sam, this was Steve's legacy, this is everything he stood for, and he gave it to you. And if he was wrong about you, then maybe what he thought about me was also wrong. Where you get a sense of, like, he expects that he's already been deemed less worthy than Sam. And that even if he's not, like, personally bitter about it, his best friend gave the thing that meant everything to him to the other guy, and he's just gonna have to live with that. And then the other guy is also not the person that Steve thought he was, which means if Bucky is less than Sam, then Bucky must be even more screwed, because Sam was supposed to be great and Sam is not. Which is
Bucky's down in the dirt.
Man! I don't like this! I don't like this at all!
It's oof. It's oof. Which is all I wanted from this show. All I wanted from this show was to be sad in a poetic way.
I wanted it to punch me in the face, and it sure did so. Oh.
Yeah, and hopefully we can kind of ratchet up to more steel chairs in the head,
Why would you do that? Why?
Why not? How do you feel about the comedy?
How do I feel about the... Yeah. I don't know how I feel about the sort of banter between the two of them. I think it's funny. I don't hate it. It just feels unnecessary. Like, the trailer implied that this is going to be a buddy cop show, and I was, like, furious, because I was like, under no circumstances should this be a buddy cop show. It has to be a real drama, because these people have... And it's not a buddy cop show, but the humor is very buddy cop. So I'm like, it's fine.
Okay, I've been thinking about this, and I can totally get how Malcolm Spellman ended up where he did, but my feeling for this is that in Civil the War, there was the reasonably deft decision made where the plot requires Sam and Bucky to work together, but Sam would not just decide to like Bucky, because Bucky, in his sicko mode, has been trying to kill Sam and his good friend Steve for quite some time. Really been going at it. Really been causing him some trouble. So how they kind of work around that problem is having Sam and Bucky hate each other, but like in a jokey, funny way. And so that kind of conflict and tension is there, but it's there in a way that doesn't take up too much oxygen. It actually kind of releases some of the tension, and it allows the plot to move forward. Now, this kind of ties into the general problem that I have with Civil the War, which is that it generally skates over almost all of the character things in the service of getting where the plot needs to go, rather than kind of letting the character drama guise the plot more. But, whatever. That's like 5-year-old beef. That's rancid now.
No! Oh, thanks for that!
Sorry. I think the thing is that with a buddy cop dynamic, you want a clear contrast between the two different dudes. And there isn't really that between Sam and Bucky. Sam and Bucky are very clear, simple, but they're pretty simple ideas for characters, but there's a lot of grace notes in there. They're very well drawn at this stage. They're not exactly chalk and cheese, though. They're not that. And I feel like the show is trying to write them as if they are that, and is kind of struggling with it. It's not the worst, because they are pretty well defined, so they are able to bounce off one another with some specificity. I think an attempted buddy cop movie that I saw, oh man, this is almost a couple of years ago now, isn't it? Was Hobbs and Shaw, the Fast and Furious spin-off, which I thought was dreadful. It was
I have not seen it, so
altogether.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, I can't recommend it. It's Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Jason Statham, who are two actors that I enjoy well enough, but it's just ill-conceived because they're both approximately the same dude. It's just that one is slightly smaller than the other, and they act as if he's like a short king, you know. And they act
No
as
one is
if,
a short
like,
king
The
to
Rock
me.
is... Wow. Very true. Fucking yeah. Oh man, I'm going to stop talking about Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, and bring it back to Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yes.
Basically, they're not chalk and cheese. They're not completely opposed personalities. It's not like one of them is a sophisticate and one is a slob. They're just black and white. That's it.
If you have to put it that way, I suppose you can.
I mean, I feel like someone somewhere along the way looks at this and thought, "Oh, buddy cop movie, sure." And I don't think it was Malcolm Spellman, but I think it was someone.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that I have a problem with Buddy Cop, and again, to be clear, I don't hate it, it's fine. But, like, buddy cop dynamics rely on a certain degree of emotional constipation. Like, emotional immaturity that prevents people from having any kind of, like resolving the issues, you know, because there's a lot of different kinds of banter, and some of it is more hostile than others. And even in the sort of more hostile kinds of banter, there are kinds of banter that involve people who know each other very well and emotionally click and, like, get each other. But I think buddy cop humor is premised largely on people being increasingly petty to one another, but in a more or less fond way, but that fondness never really coalescing into proper communication. And would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. I think it's fundamentally adversarial. That it's a situation of these two conflicting personalities are forced to work together by circumstance as they give out to one another, but they give out to one another in a way that is clear. It's clear to everyone but them that on some level they do in fact get along. Otherwise, they would not enjoy arguing with one another so much. And as a result of all this, just like the fundamentals of the genre, no matter what you do, it's going to come off a little bit gay.
No, but my problem with this is that it's not gay enough, or rather that, like, it's very, like, buddy cop genres, despite the fact that they are, you're right, like, quite homoerotic, or at least homosocial, they are also quite straight. Like, there's a lot of, like, straight guyness to them, and, like, weird conventions of masculine not talking about it, which, and this is my problem with it, I'm fine with the genre. I enjoy a good buddy cop movie. I just don't think that either Sam or Bucky is in a position to be emotionally like that. Because Sam's a therapist. Sam's a therapist by trade when we meet him.
Yeah.
And Bucky has been through so much trauma. Like, I'm not saying that just because you've been through trauma, you have to be, like, emotional all the time. But I just don't understand why like, he's not he's been through so much shit. And maybe that has led to a lot of repression. But I somehow don't see it as the kind of repression that would result in buddy cop dynamics. Like, the last time we saw him for any extended period of time, he was making sad eyes at Steve and saying things like, "It always ends in a fight," or "I didn't want to kill anyone," or "I remember all of them." Like, that's not a buddy cop dynamic. He's sad.
It's not a buddy cop guy. He's just sad. All I want is for Sebastian Stan to be sad and stare off into the middle distance. I don't want them to make self-aware jokes about how he stares.
He's softer than that, and Sam's a therapist, so why they have this dynamic, I don't know. It's fun, but I don't get it.
The show does not seem to especially remember that Sam started out as a therapist.
To be fair, nobody remembers that Sam started out as a therapist. It never comes up ever again, which I hate. I hate that very much. I will say...
Except that Steve becomes a therapist to remember Sam.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah.
Aw,
Yeah.
Steve therapist. That's weird. No. But I will say that I do like when the buddy cop humor kind of resolves into something a bit more barbed. And it may not be immediately obvious, but it's just sort of there. Like, the bit where Sam makes a joke about how they are not assassins, and then Bucky just walks away, and Sam is like, shit.
Uh-oh.
I screwed that interaction up. That's not how I wanted it to go.
Yeah.
Or the bit where, like, they talk about...
Please do not cause an international incident, Bucky Barnes.
No, I didn't mean it that way. I'm sorry. Come back. There's like a bit before that where Sam calls Bucky Buck, and Bucky says, "You can't call me that." And it's quite a like, it's a kind of difficult moment actually when Sam's like, "Well, Steve calls you that," and Bucky says, "Well, you're not Steve," basically.
Yeah.
Which ow. But there's also a joke where Bucky is like, you know, Steve has known me for longer. And also Steve had a plan, which is it's a reference to sort of Sam not having a plan and Bucky like ribbing him for not having a plan. But it's also, crucially, part of Steve's weird propaganda song. He is the Star-Spangled Man with a Plan.
Spangled Man with a Plan.
Yeah. And
yeah, I think in the course of grieving Steve, both of these dudes have kind of got caught up in the idea of Steve as an icon, as Captain America and a symbol, rather than like as their friends that they knew. This definitely makes sense for Sam, because Sam met Steve when he was Captain America and had been, and he was like this national icon going back decades. Buck, it's more surprising because Buck knew Steve since they were kids.
I mean, I'm not actually. I didn't read that as Bucky like grieving Steve as Captain America. I read that as Bucky making a massive passive-aggressive dig at Sam about giving up the shield, because Sam has chosen not to be the Star-Spangled Man with a plan. He, in fact, has no plan, which is one of the many reasons why he is not allowed to call him Buck.
Yeah. My reaction to that is that Bucky is in fact more casual, right, rather than Buck, which is surely less. But whatever.
I mean, Buck is diminutive of Bucky, which is already a diminutive of someone's middle name. I cannot imagine why he would spend his whole life letting people call him Bucky, but that's not the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
His name
James is right
James.
There.
I mean, if they called him Buchanan Barnes, that would have made us like there are only so many nicknames you can get out of Buchanan, but his name is James.
You shall refer to me as Cannon. Oh, speaking of names, what was White Wolf? Was that from the comics?
Apparently. That seemed like a silly joke to put in there, considering that it never comes up again. He is apparently called, or there is a superhero called the White Wolf in the comic books, and they do refer to him that way in one of the after credit scenes in a movie somewhere. I believe it's Black Panther.
Yeah, Black Panther. That's like because he's in Wakanda, and that's the only place they acknowledge that Bucky Barnes has been slumming it on the riverside.
He's having a good time. Don't stop him now.
He's doing a white girl retreat.
Yeah, although, I mean, White Panther, really? Really, Sam?
White Panther.
Really? But that's how I feel about the humor. It's fine.
It's fine.
It's
it
fine.
seems to kind of undercut other stuff, though.
Yeah, it does. But they do sort of pull it back at points, so I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like when they first meet up, then they do a bunch of it, because they feel like it feels like the show knows it has to hit the beat, and then like as time goes on, it kind of gets more specific about it, and then that's kind of where it comes together more.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I agree. I also think it's notable how the trailer cuts around everything that is not that. And, like, granted, the trailer is very short. But I'm always fascinated by how films and TV series are marketed versus what they actually are. And I was thinking about this a lot because the trailer is starts with the therapy scene, which is in this episode. And you can see from this episode that the trailer is actually very misleading because the therapy scene does not go in any way the way that it appears to.
Yeah, it seems like the therapy scene in the trailer seems like it's much more funny thing, and in practice it's a fairly serious scene that has jokes but still kind of keeps the tense tone.
Yeah, exactly.
Although that scene, again...
Why the jokes?
No, I was thinking specifically they are making it fairly gay, and what I'm thinking about specifically here is the legs open thing.
Yes! Yeah, let's just interleave our knees while staring into each other's eyes and saying, Sam, your decision to not be Captain America has made me question my already extremely questionable self-esteem.
And my sexuality.
And Sam saying, listen, I know I will never have your approval, nor the approval of our shared boyfriend, who is now dead. However,
God.
You two white men will never understand what I had to go through.
Damn.
Which is a very different scene from what we see in the trailer, which is a therapist going, so Bucky, what do you have a problem with Sam? And Bucky goes, he never freaking plans anything, which is just it's not the same. It's not the same
whatever.
scene.
It's not substantial. It's not, yeah. It's like they do a jokey joke for a while and then they get down to business. I was reading an interview with the director, whose name's Carrie Skoglund, and we were talking last episode about the first therapy scene from the first episode, because this show has a bunch of therapy scenes. That's cool.
Hooray!
Hooray! Sadness. But, the angle we were talking about specifically, where it's, of Bucky's drawn and it's partly out of focus, and didn't you say that was an echo of a shot from one of the previous movies?
It's the exact shot that they have a Winter Soldier where Bucky's strapped in a chair and he's like, the man on the bridge, I knew him. It's the same angle. They even get the, lighting very similar.
That's interesting, because, I'll take your word for it that that it's a deliberate echo, but what she said in the interview is that and I'm going to quote here, how do you get the same kind of level of detail and feel like you're immersed inside their heads? Instead of a big wide cinema, I went into minutiae and really got inside eyeballs and played with focus. The goal was to be, as much as we possibly could, inside Bucky's head as he's listening and dealing with the words and avoiding the words that this woman is trying to help him with. And also apparently Seb Stan improvised parts of that scene, for what that's worth.
Why would you tell me that? I'm already so parasocial about this guy.
Yeah.
I don't need to know this.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I often think of ad-libs as just being jokes rather than the real dramatic meat of it.
You mean in this scene specifically, the one that we just watched, or the previous one?
Oh no, episode 1 specifically.
Oh, also speaking of episode 1 and therapy, the callback in this episode where Bucky asks his therapist on his way out, what was rule 2 again? And she said rule 2 is don't hurt anyone. And I'm wow. I mean, it's possible that they were just making a thing about how Bucky is planning to punch a few more people in the face. But I think...
But no, that felt like a shot at the therapist.
Yeah. I think he meant, but you hurt me. But I'm hurting Sam. Or you have hurt Sam. F*** you.
Yeah, and I like that line is kind of just up in the air. That there's a few different ways you can take it. It's an interesting moment.
Yeah. I mean, I think it doesn't capture, but all the things that I've been saying and that you've been saying, they get together to the reason why I like this show so far so much is because maybe my standards for TV or just MCU related content are way too low. But I was not expecting this show to go to places it went to. I kept expecting them to pull their punches, and they didn't. And I'm very impressed by that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's really cool. I am enjoying it a lot, and I am surprised by kind of its ambition and its scope, and maybe the boot is going to drop sooner or later, but so far it seems like it's doing a really good job. I want to talk about what you call the smash flaggers.
Yeah. Let's talk about the plot that you mentioned right at the top of this episode. There's a plot.
Yeah, the plot. Whatever, right? Fuck plot. We have a cute redhead. We have a Robin Hood type called Carly Morgenthau.
She has a name. I missed that. What's her name?
Yeah. Carly Morgenthau.
Name's Carly? Okay, cool.
Yeah, Carly. So what is interesting to me about the smash flaggers, and this could go any which direction at all. Of all the parts of this show that could go wrong, I think the Flag Smashers is still up there, because we find out a little bit more about them, but we're still a third of the way into the show and we still don't really get their deal. But that, I think, is okay, because I think the show is being cagey about what exactly their deal is. I think it's still meant to be a bit of a mystery, and I think it's going to kind of hit us with their ideas and ideology as kind of like some manner of twist or reveal that's going to change the story.
Yeah.
For the time being, they are talking about the idea of no borders, which, sure. The idea of this as the fallout of the blip, which I think is good, because a common criticism of the MCU post-Endgame has been that it hasn't dealt with the blip enough. Although there hasn't been a lot of MCU content post-Endgame so far, but one of those things is Spider-Man Far From Home, which is kind of ha-ha-he-he about the whole thing, which I thought was a reasonable choice for a Spider-Man movie, but is a kind of a weird choice for a movie that came out only 2 or 3 months after Avengers Endgame, but which I don't think they really wanted it to be.
Is that the real weakness was Avengers Endgame doing that shit. Because can you imagine every other person in the MCU just like glaring at Stephen Marcus and McFeely and the Russo brothers like, fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck you.
Now we gotta deal with this shit.
Us over.
Yeah. I was looking over the full sweep of the MCU. I mean, not the full sweep, not the Netflix shows, but like just the movies all laid out in a line, and trying to piece together, okay, how many of these do I actually enjoy? And kind of the conclusion that I came to is that I like many of the individual ideas in the MCU, but there are a few that I really don't like. And one of them is the fucking central plot arc that ties all of them together, that the individual movies keep having to tie into. So it's kind of just become this situation of, like, the classic basic bitch complaints about Stephen Moffat, Doctor Who, where, like, oh, you go at the individual episodes, but when you look at the plot arc, it's bad. So,
yeah.
So,
yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's kind of where it's at. Individual movies can be fun. There are a few bangers in there. Infinity Saga, fuck off.
Terrible.
Eat my entire...
The Flag Smashers, yeah. So you're saying they are into no borders. They, quote unquote, want to return things to the way they were during the blip.
Yes.
And that's what we know about them so far.
Yep. And I'm sure you noticed this, but I found it interesting as a choice made for what these characters are at this point in the story. Once the fight scene has passed, we kind of pick up Carly's point of view, and she's framed as if she's like a third protagonist.
She's very sympathetic.
Like, we're kind of on her side. She's very sympathetic, and not just because she's cute, because she is. So, like, mark that down as some more white privilege, I suppose. Okay.
Yeah.
Just that, like, we follow her along, and it's like, I think key thing here is that one of the first things that we see from her post the fight scene is that, oh, you guys must be hungry. And she like nods, yeah. And then she's given like, oh, this is like my family's ancestral meal. It's chicken liver. And then she's like kind of like awkwardly like, ah, cool. And then she like just quietly puts the lid
Fun
back
fact,
on.
I was eating chicken liver at that exact moment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How is it?
Fine. Might have made me ill, but it tasted perfectly good, so I don't know.
Whoopsie dupsie. But like that's it's a light little joke. It comes and
cute.
goes. You almost don't notice it, but it puts you on Carly's side because now the scene grammar is like, oh, a little mishap has happened to Carly and she deals with it, and that means that you're on her side now. It's like, it is not as good as Alfred Hitchcock, but it is the same basic kind of scene as the middle of Psycho, where like you get the big horrifying scene where the lady gets stabbed, and then the body is getting disposed of. It's being put in a trunk. The car is being pushed out into a bog, I believe, and then there's a moment where it seems like the car isn't going to sink, and the dude looks nervous. As then the car does sink, and he's like, huh. And because of the way it's framed, you're kind of like, huh, with him. Because, like, we've learned enough film grammar that we know that when we sympathize with who the movie tells us to sympathize with.
Yes, exactly.
We follow the camera.
Yeah.
And I think the camera is leading us in that direction.
I fully agree, and I find that fascinating. And it's not just the framing, although I did pick up on that. It's also like, it's intensely sympathetic. These people are opening their home to her, and she's grateful to them, even if she doesn't want to eat their food. And then later, like, her friend does a heroic sacrifice, and we are so totally on his side. Because he's like, I'm going to save the people I care about, and she gives him a hug, and it's very sad, and there's this, like, tragic goodbye, and he gets, like, gunned down by unseen American military forces, and you're like, well, fuck the unseen American military forces, they're terrible. They just killed a dude.
Yeah. But we don't know anything about that dude. That dude could have killed a bunch of kids for all we know.
Yeah. But also, if you look at, the things the Flag Smashers have done on screen, they have graffitied a bunch of places, stolen some money from a
bastards.
bank. They've stolen some money from a bank more or less non-violently, like, more or less. Stolen a bunch of vaccines that they apparently are bringing to refugee camps, and kicked a bunch of people in the face. Now, that last one would normally signify villainous intent, but considering that we're watching a Marvel movie, everyone has kicked everyone in the face, so it doesn't count.
It's true. It doesn't count.
Yeah.
They're also, like, using the black masks to kind of signify a possible villainness, but I feel like they might be driving at the Antifa thing of just because someone's wearing a scary black mask doesn't mean they're the bad guy.
Yeah.
And also masks have taken on a different tenor lately, although I don't think the show meant that, but it still exists in that context.
So do vaccines. That they are delivering to refugee camps.
Damn, Zima's just out here drinking the vaccines like Actimel. We're kind of running up on time, so do you have any final thoughts?
I do have two predictions about this series that are both quite wild and I doubt are going to come true. But
so they're not really predictions, they're more wish lists.
No. Okay, so the first one is the Flag Smashers are actually fine, and Bucky and Sam help them. That's not that rogue. We've sort of explained why that's quite possible. But, you know,
I agree with
there
that.
we go. The second one, which is never going to happen, and I don't know if I want it to happen, but it does seem like it would make sense given the themes of the text, is that Sam is not going to be Captain America because he and Bucky collectively decide, or Sam himself decides, that Captain America is bullshit. And no one fucking cares about Captain America.
Damn. I don't think they're going to go there.
They're not.
I think that Sam is going to become Captain America, and that is going to be a win for the black community. And, you know, I don't even think that would be bad. Although I don't think it would be fine. Good, but I don't think
I would be happy with it.
Be fine.
I would be okay with that. But I like my ending better, where they both go, wait, hang on, we just missed Steve. Furthermore, the guy who's currently Cat is perfectly fine. He's just a tool of the American government, and so we hate him. But any person who's Cap is going to be a tool of the American government, and we'd hate them too. So fuck this, I'm gonna retire to the VA.
Yeah, we're gonna join Shields?
No.
Whatever.
No.
We're not gonna join any of those.
We quit.
We're gonna retire to Wakandan riverbank. Maybe kiss a little, maybe touch a little.
Bucky will retire to Wakandan riverbank. Sam will go back to being a therapist. They'll have a long distance relationship. It'll be good. Whatever.
Yeah. Cool. On that bombshell, let's wrap things up.
Right.
I have my thing. I got things to plug. 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 Yeah, I got things to plug. Yeah, I got things to plug.
Okay, this is starting to sound kind of dubious now.
Okay, sorry, I was looking for the notes. God, I'm trying to open up the right fucking Scrivener file. Okay, you can find me on Twitter at Loafers Writes. That's loafers as in the shoe and writes as in the verb. You can find my writing on marklaherty.wordpress.com. That's marklaherty.wordpress.com. You can find me on Patreon at Loafers. And you can also find my other podcast there, which is called Reading Player One, where I read the bad book Ready Player One with my lesbian Canadian friends, Jesse and Sam, and we dunk on it. I also wrote the theme song, and the art is by Carousel Unique.
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Kimberly_Chu. I also co-host another podcast called Scribe to Screen, currently on hiatus. You can find that wherever you found this. Congratulations on being a great podcast finder. Good job. I also have music at www.soundcloud.com/chukayan. And I'm on Patreon.
It's great music.
Thank you very much. I'm on Patreon at patreon.com/chukayan. Also, I'm working on a novel, so if any of the people who are out there are publishers, call me.
That means you, Jim, if you're listening to this.
Yeah, Jim.
I'm doing the hard sell for my pal here. Yeah. I think we still don't have a sign-off, so I want to suck Bucky's dick! Goodbye!
Stop doing that! Stop!